MovieWeb.com.
Early on, I had mentioned to Roger that this was my first love story since Gates of Heaven. And he said, well, yeah, it's a love story, but it's a love story only Errol Morris could have directed. And it is a love story, a very peculiar love story, but I would say a very romantic love story. So let's hear your journalism question.
My journalism question. Now, I've noticed this, and maybe it's
Stick it to me.
No, well, this is just recently I've noticed more and more interviewers sitting down and saying, they give a topic and then they say, can you talk about that? And I'm wondering, is that professional to pose a question in that way, to just throw out a topic and then say, talk about that? As if I would say, Tabloid is a great movie, talk about that.
There is no rule. I mean, you tell me, is there a rule book on how to conduct an interview? I don't think so. I have a goal in every interview that I do, is to try to make that person come alive, to get them to tell their story in an interesting, compelling, powerful way. But it's not as though you have to ask questions in a certain way. It's not as though you even have to ask questions at all.
Well, I guess that was my question. That isn't really a question. It's just, hey, talk about that.
I'll give you an example. I really don't like to do interviews with a list of questions. I never have a prepared list of questions, even though I prepare. I believe in preparing. I just don't believe in preparing a list of questions that I'm going to go through and tick them off one by one. I was doing a movie for the beginning of the Academy Awards years ago, and I was told I had to interview Laura Bush. So we trekked down to the White House for the interview with Laura Bush. Everyone's saying their favorite movie. What's your favorite movie? The White House tells me I have to have a list of prepared questions for Laura Bush. And I say, well, no, I don't do that. I don't have a list of prepared questions. And well, you have to have a list of prepared questions. No, I don't do that, blah, 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 blah. We go back and forth. I never give them the list of prepared questions. I get down to the White House. They give me, typed up, the list of questions I'm going to ask Laura Bush, and typed underneath them the list of replies she's going to give me to those questions. So I walk into the interview, and I say to her, is your favorite movie really The Wizard of Oz? Because that was in the typed stuff that had been given to me by the press agents at the White House. She said, of course not. My favorite movie's Giant. When I was a little girl in Midlands, Texas, I stood in line for hours and hours and hours to become an extra in the George Stevens film.
And that's off the script, so you would have never known that had you just read off what was given to you.
It's completely different from what was given to me.
Yeah, even the answers, which is nuts.
The question and the answer, not there.
No. Well, now...
So is that permissible? Yeah, of course it's permissible. I did a movie with a writer, Philip Gurevich, and we wrote a book together based on the interviews from the movie. And he said to me at one point, are you aware that you always start interviews the same way, same kind of question at the beginning of every interview you do? I said, no, what is it? He says, you always start every interview by saying, I don't know where to start.
That's what you do. That's great.
And I guess I do that. I wasn't aware of it, but guess what? I don't know where to start. Is that a bad thing to say? I have no idea what I'm doing. No. I do have a kind of idea what I'm doing, but I don't know really.
You're like one of the leading professionals, and then you admit that you don't know what you're doing. It makes it, I don't know, worse or better for the other people that are trying to follow in your footsteps, because then all of a sudden they're throwing out their notes and saying, I'm going to do it Errol Morris way.
It's like this truth deal. And it really irritates me. People think that you get at the truth in one way or two ways. And if you don't use those methods, you don't get at the truth. Or this whole idea that you show up with a handheld camera and available light and somehow the truth pops out.
I would think beer or whiskey would be the best way to get to the truth.
Perhaps in your case.
Not me drinking myself, I'm saying if you buy
You drinking yourself silly.
Well, the truth will come out. Now,
but it's a process. You sit in an interview. Interviews are endlessly interesting to me. It's a human relationship. You're trying to capture something about the relationship of one person to another. And I've found over the years that you want to create a situation. That's my job as a director, because presumably I do direct things. My job as a director is to get people to come alive in front of a camera. Otherwise, I'm unemployed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and last question I'll ask you is, how do you think your own celebrity, because I mean, you yourself are superseding some of the stories you're telling. How does that help, hinder, or push you when you find a new narrative that you want to tell?
Am I really becoming a celebrity?
What are you talking about? Everybody knows who Errol Morris is.
Is this really, I wonder about this. I'm not in front of the camera. There's so many people who are really out there in your face.
Maybe it's a name brand more than a celebrity, though. But I mean, people know the name.
I'm willing to be a name brand. You mean like Tide?
Or, yeah, Folgers coffee.
Or Folgers.
You know, Pepsi Cola. I see Errol Morris, I'm getting a tasty beverage here.
Yeah, I'm still able to make movies, and I like to think, I could be wrong about it, that I do something different than the other guys, both in the interviews and the style of filmmaking. I also like to think there's an obsessive quality, which I'm proud of in what I do. Joyce McKinney is a natural character for me. I mean, she's kind of like me. Is that a horrible thing to admit?
I don't think so.
I identify with her. Crazy, romantic, obsessed, determined, a little more than self-destructive. If I do my job right, and I try to do it right, I remain interested in these stories long after I've finished them. It's not as though I've crossed every T and dotted every I in this or any other story that I've ever done. They're unresolved mysteries, deep unresolved mysteries. Here you have a story. At the heart of it is, did Joyce rape Kirk Anderson? There's Joyce's argument that a woman can't rape a man. It'd be like putting a marshmallow in a parking meter. Kind of compelling argument in its own right. KJ, her friend who accompanied her on this cockamamie trip to Great Britain, is dead. Can't interview him unless you have a technique that I don't know about.
Easy boy.
And the third guy, the love object, Kirk Anderson, isn't talking. We sent him, I don't know how many registered letters, but more than a couple. And he never said, hey, I'd love to come in for an interview. We never heard from him at all. So you're limited. You're weaving. Here's why here's my argument in favor of this film, why I like it. Often when you're telling a movie about the obsessive pursuit of the truth, often the story is about the impediments to finding it. how you can become lost in the funhouse of a story and competing narratives and may never ever get to that place you're going. Not that the truth doesn't exist, of course it exists. Something happened in that love cottage. It's just we may never be able to grab a hold of it, as it were, because...
An old 8mm tape comes out of nowhere.
Exactly correct. Exactly correct.
You know, you can tell a lie long enough till you believe it.